So we're discussing the topic of flexibility versus mobility. Flexibility and mobility share one thing in common, and that is there are 4 muscle actions. The 4 muscle actions include relaxing a muscle, so disengaging it, willingly not engaging it, and lengthening it. That typically happens if you are willingly disengaging your muscle and allowing gravity to stretch you, or an outside force such as somebody coming in and stretching you, or using a strap or something like this. That's when you would have passive stretching, and that would be helping to potentially increase flexibility. So that would be working on your flexibility. Whereas mobility requires 3 other aspects of muscle engagement and disengagement. So the 4 muscle actions, the first one, relax and lengthen a muscle. So currently, gravity has just stretched my bicep because I relaxed, and now the bicep muscle has lengthened. Okay, but on the flip side, I've relaxed and shortened my tricep muscle, okay? And the reason that I didn't have to engage my tricep in order for this muscle to shorten, I just had to let gravity take a hold, and the tricep muscle is now shortened. And that is the second aspect. We could consider that as part of flexibility. However, most people are not really intentionally shortening muscles. They're more intentionally trying to lengthen muscles when trying to go after flexibility. When you're trying to create mobility, on the other hand, and let's think about the word mobility. Mobility implies that you're trying to create movement. It's the ability to move, right? So the ability to move not only requires the ability for a muscle to relax and lengthen, but it also implies that there's a muscle engagement and a shortening of that muscle engagement. So when I move here, when I pick up this the Sharpie here, what happens is my bicep muscle is shortening, and it's creating that movement. So it's engaging and shortening at the same time. That's an aspect. Engagement and shortening is an aspect we usually associate with strength. Strength is a component and a necessary part of mobility, where strength doesn't necessarily have a place in flexibility, though I'd argue the way that I define the term flexibility is a little bit different, but this is based on kind of popularity of terms. When we think of flexibility, we think of stretching a muscle, which is elongating it and relaxing it. Okay, but mobility, on the other hand, has an implication that there is an engagement involved. When you walk, your muscles are engaging. Some muscles are engaging and shortening, while other muscles are disengaging and lengthening. Okay, so all like running, all sports, all athletic movement where there is especially speed involved, you're going to have shortening, engagement and shortening, number 3 here, and you're also going to have relaxing and lengthening involved. So typically one muscle group engages and shortens, while the opposing muscle group lengthens and relaxes. Okay, so now that we have that in place with movement in general, it requires both of these things. There's another aspect, and this is typically associated with graceful movements. So when you see somebody move really beautifully in their body, what they're typically doing is not just kind of engaging, relaxing, but they're engaging muscles while they are lengthened. And that's what creates slow down movement. So this action I'm doing right now, what is creating a slow movement in the body is that I'm engaging certain muscles to create the movement, and I'm still engaging the opposing muscles, but less so. So you have these prime movers that are activating, and they're winning the battle, right? In order to create, say chaturanga, there's, in that case, you've got gravity involved, so let's not get too in detail, but a lot of yoga postures and a lot of movement have prime movers, muscle engagements that are creating movement. And if you want your movement to be more graceful, more slow and controlled, then you keep the opposing muscle group turned on, activated, engaged, but you allow for a lengthening, which is number 4. So the 4 components that mobility requires is relaxing and lengthening a muscle. That is one component. Another one would be to be able to relax and shorten a muscle. And then you have these other 2 sides of engagement and shortening a muscle, engagement and shortening, and then engagement and lengthening, What allows me to, let's say, put this down slowly is an engagement of the bicep as it lengthens. Otherwise, I would simply drop the arm because gravity and the weight of this object are forcing my arm down. But what allows me to move down slowly is an engagement, but allowing for lengthening. So mobility, in my opinion, is far superior to flexibility because mobility implies that flexibility is a part of it. And flexibility is only just basically one, maybe we consider two components of muscular activity. So mobility requires all four of these components, and that is why I think it's far superior. There is an upcoming immersion that starts March 5th if you're watching this live. And if you're not watching this live, then don't worry. The immersion lasts a lifetime, so you can get it at any time. So it's 12 classes, all levels, and we're gonna be focusing on mobility of the hips, mobility of the spine, mobility of the shoulders, okay, as well as some mobility in the ankle joints and things like that, and the wrists and so on, which means we're gonna be developing the ability to relax muscles and engage muscles, the ability to lengthen muscles and shorten muscles. I do want to answer this question. You activate glutes in Uttanasana, question mark? That's a great question. So should you activate the muscles that are lengthening in a posture? In my personal opinion, more often than not, activating the muscles that are lengthened in any kind of posture like Uttanasana, in this case, when you bow forward, your hamstrings are lengthened, your glutes are lengthened. Should you engage those muscles? So to engage those muscles would be engaging the muscles that are lengthening. That's number 4 on the mobility list, okay? And it's perhaps one of the more important ones because most people don't necessarily know how to engage the muscles. Now, so it depends. If you're slowing down the descent in Uttanasana, then absolutely you'd be engaging your hamstrings and your glute muscles so that you don't just fall, but you're slowly descending. So that means you're engaging the muscle, the buttock muscle and the hamstrings while they're starting to lengthen. Now, what's winning is the weight of your torso, gravity, maybe your hip flexors are helping you forward fold. They're winning, but participating in this and not just giving up is the hamstrings and the glutes. Now, when you get down there, in my opinion, if you want to increase muscle integrity, muscle integrity is basically a muscle's ability to do its job. If you want to increase that, then yes, you would want to, in a forward fold, be engaging your hamstrings and your gluteus muscles. We'll definitely go over that in the mobility immersion. Again, that starts March 5th. The link is in my bio today, in my Instagram bio, I believe, back. Now, the mobility immersion starts March 5th, 2022, and this immersion includes 12 classes, all levels. We're gonna be focusing on mobility of the spine, mobility of the hips, mobility of the shoulders, and we'll do things like this, like when you bow forward in Uttanasana, how to engage your muscles so that it slows the descent, but also increases your muscle integrity. When muscle integrity increases, you're gonna find that flexibility automatically increases. So if you're going for the idea of you want to lengthen your muscles, you want to access more postures, then mobility is the way anyway, because it's going to increase your flexibility because through the idea of muscle integrity. When your muscles are in better shape, when they're healthier, they're going to be able to lengthen more. And if your goal is to passively lengthen them, that will increase as well. Also, you activate when you get out. Yes, in order to get out of, say like you want to come up from Uttanasana, from this position here, and you want to rise up, activating the hamstrings and the glutes is what takes the pelvis from this anterior tilted position into an upright position. Okay, yes, there's other muscles involved, like the back muscles that keep your spine from, if you go from here and you just activate the glutes and hamstrings, then your back would form a rounded position. But if you want to come up to this position here and just rise up, then your back muscles engage, but your hamstrings and glutes are what are going to bring you into that upright position. So the mobility immersion, we're going to be focusing on all of these key points of the 4 muscle actions: relaxing and lengthening, relaxing and shortening, engaging and shortening, engaging and lengthening. And that's really going to increase the muscle activity in your body, neuromuscular activity, and it's going to increase the health and the wellness of your muscular system. Arguably also the health of your joints as well. Welcome. We were just talking about the difference between flexibility and the commonalities between flexibility versus mobility, and that there are 4 muscle actions that make up flexibility and mobility. Flexibility really has one and that's relaxing and lengthening a muscle. Typically, because of gravity, we take a posture, we bow forward as a result of gravity, and then we stretch a muscle. We stretch a muscle trying to increase our flexibility. Arguably, that's a very slow method, and it's a dangerous one because it only kind of promotes one aspect of muscle activity. Whereas there's three other aspects of muscle activity, and that's when we talk about the word mobility, because it's inclusive of all the different muscle activities. So we have relaxing and lengthening, which is what we think of as when we say stretching. Then we have relaxing and shortening, which is not as thoughtful, but when we stretch, it happens inadvertently, because when you lengthen one side of a muscle, the opposite side is shortening. Now, if you are aware of that fact, then I think that's I think that increases your proprioceptive capability. If you're aware that one side is shortening while one side is lengthening, that increases your understanding of where your body is in space. And we can put that under the flexibility category if you'd like, but I think really mobility is included in these two, and there's an intentional and deliberate practice of shortening muscles while you relax them. Now here comes the other side that is really important for mobility and is not really talked about when talking about flexibility. Most people, when they think of flexibility, they think of like, can I put my leg over my head? Can I stretch this, stretch that? We think of stretching. And with mobility, we're talking about engaging muscles in order to create movement. And that could be engaging a muscle to hold a static posture. That would be called isometrics. It can be engaging a muscle to actually create graceful transitions between different postures. So we have engaging and shortening a muscle would be the triceps in downward facing dog. You're pushing, straightening the elbow joint, so you're shortening the triceps while they are engaging. So they're engaging to actually create a shortening of them, versus chaturanga, they're engaging to slow down the movement, to create graceful movement. That's number 4, where you slow down the lengthening of a muscle by engaging it. The next immersion starts March 5th, and that's going to include the 4 components of muscle actions. These 4 are going to be the primary basis for the immersion. We're going to be practicing 12 classes together, 75 minutes each. You can practice with us live Saturdays, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 12 noon New York City time zone. Or if the time zone doesn't work for you, or if the days don't work for you, it doesn't matter. You get lifetime access to these classes. You can watch anytime, as many times as you like after they go live. Thanks everybody. Take care of yourself and see you.